Welcome to Unleashed at Work and Home, the show dedicated to helping veterinarians, vet techs, dog trainers, shelter and rescue workers, pet sitters, and all the other animal-crazy pet professionals manage their stress and find more joy. I'm your host, Colleen Pilar, and I'm thrilled you're here with us today. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on your favorite app so that you won't miss a single episode. This episode is brought to you by our free community, the Circle of Resilient and Thriving Pet Professionals. If you like the ideas shared here, then you're invited to continue the conversation with other lifelong learners in the community. You can find out more at colleenpilar.com. It's the perfect place for you to learn cool stuff, feel good, and take action to create the life you love. Come join us. Welcome back to Unleashed at Work and Home. My guest today is Dr. Deb Jones. You probably don't call her Dr. Deb Jones. When you think of her, you probably think of her as just, Deb Jones, dog trainer extraordinaire. At least that's how I do. Welcome, Deb. I'm so glad you're here today.
Hi, Colleen. Thank you so much for asking me to be here. I'm very excited to chat with you.
I'm delighted to have you today. Your cooperative care work has really changed. It's changed the game for a lot of people. And I think most people will be familiar with that. But I'm curious how that became such a passion for you. Why is that the piece that became your piece?
Yes, it's funny how things happen sometimes. I'd never intended to go down this path at all. And I sort of got pushed along the way to get to the point where cooperative care became probably the largest part of what I'm doing in my work now. And I'd say it started about 13 years ago because I had a dog who decided the vet was never going to touch her again. She had a bad experience, and that was that. She was done. Female border collie, and she had very strong opinions about most things in life, and this became her strongest opinion. And she was such a lovely, wonderful dog. But on this, she was not budging. She's like, no. And all my previous dogs had been, well, they like it or they don't, but they're tolerant enough. And when we go to the vet and when we do grooming, they might not be crazy about it, but we get it done. And at the time, I was really more focused on training for sports.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us didn't even think about training for grooming and veterinary care. It was just something that had to be done, and we did it no matter what. But when Star started to have her issue, I realized that I really wanted to find a way to make this better for her. And for me, because I'm looking at a year-old dog and thinking, I've got, a dozen more years. I don't want to fight this battle over and over again. And very close in time to that, I had gone to Shed Aquarium in Chicago, and Ken Ramirez was doing a week-long program there. Mm-hmm. And I was lucky enough to get in. It was actually the last one he ever did there, so I felt very lucky. And I kind of got in at the last minute because somebody dropped out, so it felt like it was a great opportunity for me. And while I was there, we did a lot of behind-the-scenes look at the training that they were doing with all sorts of different species of animals and marine mammals. And one thing just struck me in one of the demos was they were working with dolphins, and they were working with having them flip over and approximating a blood draw from them, only because they might need it at some point in time. And so one of the things they said was, we work on this every day. And I thought, well, why aren't we doing that with dogs? Because they're going to need blood draws. They're going to need lots of physical care throughout their lives. And I didn't know anybody who had really focused on it with dogs. People in zoos were focusing on it. A lot of very good trainers were focusing on husbandry care, which is sort of the term we use for it, just in the general way of anything physical you do to your dog. So I had a lot of time to think about that kind of epiphany I was having that, wow, we need to do this with dogs too. And so I had the perfect subject to do it with because I had Star and I needed to do something anyway. So I started working with her. And I knew enough about the different kinds of learning, classical and operant conditioning, that I knew where I needed to get started. I had a pretty good plan for moving forward, of course, there's lots of trial and error in that whole process. And I discovered so many things. We just lost Star in the spring. She died in the spring. And so she was a big deal, I think, in my impetus to do this. So
Mm-hmm.
she really motivated me and inspired me to keep working on this because I always wanted to make her life better. And then as I had more dogs and got more dogs, they were also became my training subjects for the different methods I was doing. And I realized as I talked to people about it that there was a huge need out there that we weren't even discussing. And people were sort of embarrassed that they couldn't do things like trim their dog's nails or do a blood draw without 4 people holding them down. And so I started to realize that we could make dogs' lives a lot better if we just did a little bit of preparation training for many of the things that we know are likely to happen to them. And so that was the start of it all for me. Those 2 things happening fairly close in time. Start deciding absolutely not, and then
Mm-hmm.
thinking about what they're doing with animals, where you basically have to be very careful with your contact with them. And I realized
Mm-hmm.
we take advantage of dogs. For most of them, we just push them and pressure them and do what we want to do to them. And most of them are like, okay, I don't like it, but
Yeah.
whatever. But when you hit a dog that says, no more, not doing it, then you realize, and that's when most people come to me. It's like they get to that, they've got that dog. And now
Mm-hmm.
they realize the importance of cooperative care. And I'm great. I'm fine with starting at that point because we can make things better.
Yeah, we can make things better.
Yeah.
That's the whole key. That's really the whole
Yeah.
point of all of the training, but particularly this kind. It's just these are experiences that dogs are likely to have, and we can make them better.
Yeah, we can predict it to some extent. And not only can we make it better for the dogs, but as I worked on this, of course, we're making it better for the owners because there's less stress and pressure. And then I realized we're making it better for the veterinarians and the staff.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the vets that I've talked to are really on board with this. If they've heard about it and understand exactly what it is we're trying to do. And they've been some of the biggest supporters of this kind of work because it makes their jobs so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
So we lower the stress all around with that. And I think that's really valuable that for people, we're as traumatized by it sometimes as the dogs are, if not more, because nobody really enjoys seeing their dog distressed
Yeah.
and upset. So if we can avoid that, people are like, it's like a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
The dog just didn't react. And that's perfect for me. I don't need you to love it. I just need you to tolerate it. And I will make it so worth your while. And when we see that, people are just so relieved because they don't want their dogs. They don't want to have to do these things in a very unpleasant way, but they don't know what to do to make it better.
Yeah, and I think tolerance is fantastic. Dogs have so much tolerance, but it's only valuable when we know that it is in fact tolerance. Because so many people say, "Oh, he's always fine with that," and I'm like,
Yeah, not that.
maybe not. And so just to say, like, "Oh, my dog can tolerate that well," and I'm making it worthwhile. It's not going to ever be the dog's favorite thing, but it's also not something that either of us needs to avoid. Isn't that wonderful? Now, there are plenty
Yeah.
of things that we tolerate, but if we can make them a little bit better, then hey, hooray! You can make it just a bit better.
Right. And there are things where tolerance is the best we're ever going to do.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to love it, and that's fine. I think Star's whole life, she did not like me doing the nails on her left front leg. She didn't like her left front leg dealt with. And I worked on it almost constantly to get tolerance. And I was thrilled to get that. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have to enjoy it. It's like going to the dentist.
Mm-hmm.
I will tolerate it, but I don't enjoy it a whole heck of a lot because it's usually not the most pleasant thing. But
Yeah.
it's also not something that have panic about or overly stressed about. It's like, yeah, these are things we have to do. And that's how I sort of want my dogs to see it. These are things we do. And in fact, it's not a big deal. It's just another of those things. So if I can prepare them for people doing a lot of weird things to their bodies, and the dog is just like, yeah, been there, done that, no big deal. That's perfect for them to come out of a vet appointment or grooming or whatever it is with the, oh yeah, again, things people do to you. They're not the most fun I've ever had, but they're not horrible either.
Yeah.
And getting to that point.
Well, what a gift Star gave us all. I'm always curious about how people fall into their careers. So, can you tell me what 10-year-old Deb thought she was going to do with her life?
Oh, that's funny because it's close, but not exact,
Mm,
actually. I thought two things. I wanted to be a writer because I was a huge reader. I was a voracious reader. Always I'd read anything, and I still do anything all the time. And so I wanted to be a writer, and that turned out to be something that I get to do now all the time, and I love that.
hmm.
I also wanted to be a veterinarian, actually, because I didn't know there were any other
Right.
sessions where you got to be around animals all the time. So veterinarian was it. When I went to college and then on to graduate school, I ended up in psychology and was fascinated by it, really enjoyed it, ended up working with rats. So animals again, it's like,
Hmm.
okay, there are animals involved in this process, which I enjoyed and I liked it. Um, I learned a lot about it. Then I ended up with my PhD in social and behavioral psychology. And in that time frame, I started training dogs and started training dogs more professionally because at that point I understood how learning worked. And so I had a really, really strong foundation and an understanding of how to change behavior and started to put those things together. And that I thought very seriously as I got out of graduate school about continuing on to become a veterinary behaviorist.
Hmm.
I almost did, but I'd been in higher education for so long, I was ready to be done with that, even though I ended up teaching for then 20 more years,
Hmm.
psychology, but I, I enjoyed that career and I like teaching, but I was burned out on that career as well. Teaching takes a lot out of you sometimes, and especially when you're doing it full time. So I was able to retire from that early, but throughout the whole thing, I'd been training dogs and writing when I could. And so now I'm still doing everything except the full-time teaching. I'm doing training dogs, training animals, writing, teaching online, all those fun things we get to do now. So I am sort of doing what I thought I would be doing as
Yeah.
an adult, but I never realized, we have so many more opportunities now, especially with what we can do online and
Hmm.
all of the people that we can impact.
Yeah.
It just amazes me. I look at my class lists for my online classes and I have people from all over the world. And that would never happen if we didn't have these outlets. And I feel like I can really have an effect on so many more people online than I can in person and in person work. And which works great for me because I like my online work a lot. I enjoy it.
Hmm.
So whenever I can sit on my sofa and work, like right now, that's perfect.
Like right now.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is cool to see how the ripple effects of all of this work matter, but that the online piece allows it to pop up in areas you just never would expect for the ripples to go in different spots, because you were having huge ripple effects on your students, both you know, your professor students and your dog training students when you were just only working in person. But now that you've got the online components, geographically, those ripples are hitting ripples in areas they never could possibly have before. And I think that's kind of amazing. I think I'm very interested in ripples. You have no idea the little things that might make a difference to a person that change something. And
Right.
particularly with your cooperative care work, just little things of a person feeling less anxiety about taking their pet to a vet makes it easier for them to take their pet to a vet, which means their pets are getting better care, which means they're more likely to have another pet in the future because they're not going to be like, oh gosh, it was so hard with the last one or any of those pieces. So 10-year-old Deb, there she is. She's thinking she might want to be a writer. She might want to be a veterinarian. And, the way we were taught way back then, those were probably very different careers. Probably no one said you could be a veterinarian who writes. Um, let's pop her forward and see you now. What would she think?
I'm kind of amazed myself every day. I'm like, I can't believe I get to do this, that this is what I do for a living. I'm always like stunned by it. At one point, I was doing a lot of cooperative care training with my cat.
Hmm.
and making videos, and ended up with an online class. And I'm like, I can't believe people are paying me to do this because this is just cool. This is fun. I would do this for nothing for myself because I enjoy it. And the fact that now I can do this all the time and that I can interact with a lot of other people, as you said, people who are having their own sets of concerns with an animal and that I can help them. I think it really does amaze me that this is how I ended up. I never would have guessed it in a million years. Nobody would have guessed that like 16-year-old Deb would ever make anything of herself anyway. So to gotten so far along in my career as a dog trainer and as a college professor and as a writer, to have all those things and to feel like I'm fairly successful at them most of the time,
Hmm.
um, is just great. You mentioned something. Let me just jump back to this, if it's okay, about the effects we're having on people around the world. Um, and I have a Facebook group with it for cooperative care. And when people join the group, I ask them, how did you hear about it? I ask them like three simple questions. And one of the questions is, how did you hear about it? So I'm always curious about those connections
Hmm.
and how did you get here? And it's amazing to me the diversity of places where people heard about cooperative care. When they tell me my vet, I'm thrilled because that means that vets are talking about it. Or they're often on breed groups. So it's like, we'll get a whole big influx of like today Australian cattle dogs. All of a sudden somebody mentioned it.
Hmm.
So now I've got, 20 people coming in with Australian cattle dogs. So we get breed groups, and I get, my trainer told me, which is great. And sometimes now Facebook is even recommending it, which I don't know how to make that happen, but it does. I have no idea how that all works, but it does. So they're coming from there, but they're coming from so many different places and coming into this. And I think that's just amazing to me, again, over and over again, that word is spreading that this is something, this whole idea that we need to work on our dog's comfort levels and reduce their stress with their care. This is something, it's like, this is its time.
Yeah.
This is the moment for it. And I just happened to be here when it happened. I don't think I caused it in any particular way, but I think I happened to be here a little bit before the big wave. And I've been like gathering resources and developing materials. And I think that all of a sudden it's like it's really caught on, that it's something that other trainers in particular, are starting to see the value of and recommending a lot,
Hmm.
that their students come to us to start down the path of finding the right resources and getting the right support and help that they need.
Yeah. It is amazing just to
Mhm.
look at all those pieces. You said, I feel like I'm so lucky I get to do all these things I would do for free. And I'm fairly successful at it I feel fairly successful at it most of the time. And that's a piece that I think a lot of pet professionals struggle with, is that they don't see how much good they are actually doing because they focus a little bit too much on the gap between what they would like for to be able to deliver and what they're able to deliver. What helps you recognize, I am fairly successful at all of this most of the time? Like,
Well, it's a strange thing because I know that a lot of trainers have a lot of confidence issues.
mhm,
And I can see why. I can understand why, especially with the online world the way it is today. It's brutal out there sometimes.
mhm,
And putting yourself out and saying, this is what I do and this is how I do it, and then having 100 people tell you you're doing it wrong. That's no easy thing. I think I'm lucky. I feel lucky that I've been in this for a long, long time. I've been in this like 35 years now. So no matter what anybody says to me, it's like, yeah, I've heard that before, been there, done that, no big deal. And I also know that just consistently doing what you do is all you need. You don't need to make some big splashy new idea that nobody's ever had before. Find the thing that really pushes you to work every day and keep doing that. And if you do that enough, people will notice and they'll want to know. They'll want to know what you're doing and how you're doing it. In the beginning, if I go way back, let me go way back for a minute. When I was still in graduate school. I was first becoming a dog trainer. I think maybe I just got my PhD and I had been a dog trainer for maybe 4 years or so. At that point, there were no really good books out there on what we used to call clicker training. And so I'm like, well, I could write that book. I don't know where the idea even came from. It's like, nobody else has done it. Somebody should do it. I might as well do it. And I just did it. And it's just like a big leap of faith for me. And I actually self-published it, had it printed at University Press, mailed them out myself when people ordered them. But it was a start. It's like start somewhere, start anywhere. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be great. We don't even have, those are no longer even in print. And I don't even think I have copies of the older books I did, but I did like 3 books like that to start with. I just did them myself. And then I got a publisher who did a few of them, and then things just moved on from there. But it's like, if you want to do the thing, just do the thing. And whether you'll see whether or not it hits a chord and whether or not it's something that people want to know more about or would like to explore further. And some things I've tried haven't worked. Oh, well, if you don't do them, you'll never know. And then I'll move on to something else. So I feel like I'm not being so concerned about things being perfect, just getting the stuff out there.
Yeah.
Just doing it. I think that's a very valuable thing for dog trainers. It's like, you do not have to be perfect. You do not have to prove that you're better than anybody else. You just have to do your work. And if your work is good, people will notice and they will ask you. Because I always say, I never tell anybody about dog training until they ask me. And then you can't stop me. And then I will talk about it all day. But I wait for them to be ready to hear it rather than trying to preach about it. And there's also the whole talking about dog training as opposed to doing dog training thing. It's like, just do the training. If you want people to believe that what you're saying is true or that you can do what you say, show us. Do a video. Let's see what you're doing. And that's scary, but that I think is important too. We can talk a lot. That doesn't mean we can train dogs. So as we see, lots of people can talk a lot, and they can even make fancy videos, but it's still not good. You can tell by watching. So get out there, do your work. Young trainers, I feel for them. I really do. I think they have it harder than we did way back. Well, not saying you're old, but when I did way back in the day. I know we've both been around for a while. And so you see the whole arc of things that's happening. And in a way, it's great because we have so much more positive training out there now than we ever did before.
Yeah.
But then people can get lost in that too, I think. I think can get lost because there's so much of it. And how do you figure out who's good and who isn't? And how do you make yourself stand out a little bit so that you can have a good long career in dog training? And for me, it's just keep doing what I'm really pulled towards. And then other people notice it and then they start to move towards it as well. And so this Facebook group that I have now today, I was looking at almost 31,000 people in this group. And I remember when I got 500, I was so amazed. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have 500 people. This is exciting. And now every time I hit another milestone with it, I'm like, I don't even know what to say anymore. I don't know how this is happening or where it's coming from, but I'm grateful that it's happening. And I'm thrilled that it's happening.
Yeah. Well, I always ask my guests to share words that matter to them. And what's so funny is this is, I think, the first time that I'm going to share the words that matter to you, and you've already kind of explained why they matter. Because I always ask, like, why do these resonate? So I asked Deb to give me some words that we could talk about. And the words she said were slow and steady, turtles win races. And I think you've just done such a beautiful job of embodying that philosophy. Slow and steady, turtles win races. But given that those are the specific words, where has that come into your life? This slow and steady, turtles win races.
That's funny because when you asked for words, I was like a little bit at a loss. I don't know, like I have a lot of things I say. I don't know how important they are, but this is something that I repeat over and over to students. And I realize that it must be coming from somewhere because I say it so much. I must see the truth in it. And in my own life, things have taken time. Things did not happen overnight. Anything that I wanted, I had to work hard for a long time to get. And knowing that I wasn't going to reach a goal tomorrow. So I'm looking at, it's going to take me 4 more years or 5 more years to get to this place. And I have to do these things regularly if I'm going to get there. Um, so I think in my own life, that's just the way it's progressed. I've seen things I've wanted. I've seen changes I wanted to make in my life, but I knew they couldn't happen fast. I knew they had to happen over time. And they have. Everything that I've ever wanted to do and move towards has happened. Maybe not as fast as I would like it, and definitely not as easily as I would like things to happen. But I think we get stuck on the goal. We know what we want. We don't think about the process of getting there and how we have to be patient with the process and how we have to work through the process. And I say that to students a lot. Simply, something as simple as you want to do your dog's nails, great. That's a goal. And that's going to take a lot of steps to get through the process. And as a trainer, one of my strengths has always been I can break something down into tiny little pieces so that you can be successful moving forward with each piece. That's, there might be 100 steps, but hey, you got to start with 1 and 2 and move up from there. Because if you try to jump to 50, you're never going to move on. You're going to fail and then you're going to give up because it's no fun. So I think that my approach to training has actually been my approach to life. And I never realized that until I just said it. That breaking it down, making it small enough to do, and then moving on as you're capable of it. That seems to be, to me, the best approach that I've found for dog training. And that seems to be, again, as I said, what seems to have worked for me in my own career. And I'm working on a new project right now where I'm looking at 6 months or so of really hard work before I see any sort of from it. And even payoff being I can just share it with somebody. You do a lot of work and there's nobody to see it because it's not ready to be seen yet. So I'm working on this long-term project that I've been putting off for 2 years because I know it's a long-term project. And I'm like, well, it's not getting any closer by thinking about it and not doing it. So I finally took the first steps this week and I've accomplished an awful lot in a week. And I'm like, well, wow, I should be doing this. And it's like, now I have to do this every week, for the next maybe 30 weeks to get where I want it to go. But hey, again, we all start somewhere and it'll get there. I know it'll get there. It's just, it looks big now. But as with all of our training things, they look big and overwhelming. And then you just slog through them. And eventually you get to the point where you can look back and go, wow, I did all that.
Yeah.
And I made it far.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. So if you had a magic wand and you could grant a wish for pet professionals and it's your wish, what would you wish for all of us?
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's a big question. That's a huge question. And there's so many things I want to say all at once. I want so many. It's like having to pick one thing is really, really hard.
Well, the good news is it's a podcast, so you don't have to pick one thing because I'm not actually giving you the
that's
one.
Good. I was like, yeah, what if I have to? I'm starting to panic because, oh my gosh, I want to give them the right thing.
Yep.
And what would that one right thing be? Okay, so for pet professionals, I'll say 2 things probably. But I'd say stay curious. Keep learning more all the time. I feel like if I don't learn something every day, it's not a good day. So learning and never saying this is the way we've always done it, because that doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. There's always something new and better that we can come up to. So staying curious about learning, staying open to learning new things. So that's the positive thing I would say. If I could give everybody something else, it would be a way to avoid burnout. Because that's such a thing in any teaching, helping profession.
Yeah.
I've hit it a couple times and it's like, we just can't go on anymore. So if there's a way to avoid it, but at best, if you hit it, which you probably will if you're a professional in this field, take a break. You need the break. Take the break. Take care of yourself and come back later when you're feeling better about the whole thing. Because I've had that both in dog training and in college teaching. And it's pretty significant danger of our field, I think, to have that.
Yeah, it's amazing what a risk it is. And it was interesting to me when I was learning more about it that actually all of the traits that make you a really good pet professional are the traits that increase your risk for burnout. That you do care about doing a good job and you are striving for greater levels of competency all the time and that it matters to you. And because of all of that, you're excellent at what you do. And because of all of that, you're at a higher risk of burnout. And so that magic wand gift that you're giving us of this way to avoid burnout is greatly appreciated because that's what we need. And that's the work that I'm really working with these days is just trying to help pet professionals find ways to, manage their stress and find more joy because the work that they're doing matters. And
Yes.
if we drive everybody into the state of burnout, it's not happening in the way we need it to happen.
Right, right. I think that's definitely the case. And the more tools we can give people,
Mm-hmm.
as a psychologist, my
Mm-hmm.
psychologist part says that there are a lot of coping tools we can give to people
Mm-hmm.
that can help them with things like this, and just not letting ourselves get to the point of complete overwhelm sometimes.
Yeah.
It is a start. It's like saying no to things is a start.
Oh, what? We're
And
allowed to say no? What? What?
I've That's become something I've become very, very good at, picking and choosing what I want to do, where I want to spend my time and energy. And I think early in a career, we tend to want to say yes to everything because we don't want to miss an opportunity. But I've learned that in general, you'll pick the right things. And there are things that you just have to let go. It's hard to do, but I think saying no, the more I say no to things, the better I feel about my career.
Yeah. Well, I am so grateful you said yes to me when I invited you to come on this podcast because this has been an awesome conversation and the things that you've said are really valuable and useful and actionable for all of our friends out there doing the work. And so I'm really grateful for that. Thank you.
I'm excited that you asked me. It's hard for me to turn down talking about cooperative care. I have to say that's one of the things I rarely to never say no to. If anybody asks me, I'm so happy to talk about it. And this has been great. It's been great to kind of touch base with you and catch up.
Yeah,
And
it's been fun. So if people wanted to learn more about you and your work, how could they do that? Because they will, I know.
oh, okay, great. A couple ways. I have several websites and I'm working on more. So, but for now, my main website is Canine in Focus. It's the letter K, the number 9 in focus, infocus.com. And that's sort of my general website that has all my information on it. I also have a website that's cooperativecarecertificate.com, where we've set up a program so people can earn certificates at increasing levels of challenge with cooperative care work. So we have 10 cooperative care exercises, what I call the 10 essential ones. And then we guide people through earning these titles and moving up to 4 levels of challenge with them. And if you work through that at any level, everything else that you're doing with your dog in terms of grooming and vet care will become much, much easier. So there's that as well. So either of those are the ways that you can get information. I do write blog posts very regularly. And so you can find my blog on my website, the Canine in Focus website. And I try to keep people updated with the things that I'm doing through there. And my big project I'm working on now, I'll just say very briefly, is a cooperative care trainer certificate.
Oh,
And
awesome.
yeah, and it's a big deal to me to talk about wanting to be perfect. It's a big deal to me to do this, which is why it's going to take a while to get there, but
Mhm.
it's coming along. So if you want to keep track of any of that, subscribe to my blog. That's the best way to follow up with what I'm doing in my Facebook group, Cooperative Care with Deb Jones. Everybody's welcome there. Feel free to join.
Awesome. Well, I will link to all of that in the show notes. I'm so
Oh, I
grateful.
appreciate that. Thank you, Colleen.
Well, thanks for coming and talking to me today, Deb. It was awesome to talk to you.
Was great way to start my day.
Thanks for listening to Unleashed at Work and Home. I invite you to come learn more at colleenpilar.com, where you can be steady, be strong, and be long.